be talking about, oh, okay. They'll be talking about why they decided to go to grad school, what the application process is like, and what grad school has been like. We have some questions prepared, and then feel free to add your questions in the chat whenever, and then we'll discuss them as well. Let's begin with introductions. So for our grad students, please introduce yourself with your pronouns, your name, your year, specialty, and where you went to undergrad. And Brian, let's start with you.
I'm sorry, what was all that? I'm Brian Weaver, he, him. I got my undergrad degree in astronomy and astrophysics, and now I am a third-year graduate student working for Dr. Bodeker and Dr. Hasselbanter doing biophysics research. Was that all the things I was supposed to say?
Where did you go to undergrad?
Penn State. Yeah, Pennsylvania.
Okay, I can go next. I am Anna Haney, she, her. I am a third-year PhD student. My specialization is astronomy and astrophysics. I went to undergrad at University of South Carolina, where I was a physics major.
Ben, would you like to go?
Sure, I'm Ben, he, him. I went to undergraduate at Occidental College, which is not too far from USC. I'm in the nanocluster physics lab under Vitaly Crescent, along with John, who's also here on the panel. Did I cover it all? Is there one more? Okay, good.
Yeah, my info is the same as Ben's. I'm a fourth year in the program here. That's, I guess, the only difference. My name is John Nyman, if you don't see it on the Zoom screen.
I can go. I'm Amy. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a first year. Let's see. I did my undergrad in physics at Harvey Mudd, and I am interested in quantum information. I'm not working with anybody, but I just came from 3 years in a startup there, so definitely in that area.
Is that all of us?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, because Tom couldn't come anymore, Paul couldn't come anymore, and Darian is supposed to be here, but is running late, I guess, so she may pop in to talk, but she is another third year. She's actually the president of GASP, and she works in Eli Levin's-Falk's group on some quantum stuff.
Okay, thanks, y'all. Why did you decide to go to grad school, and how does it like add value to like your future plans?
Same order?
We can go in like whatever order, and not all of you have to.
I'll go first just because I can remember this vividly. I could not get a job doing the kind of things that I wanted to with a BA in physics, because that's what I got at Occidental College, because it's a liberal arts school. So I had a BA in physics with a minor in math and computer science, and they were like, but why don't you have a bachelor's of science? So getting another degree kind of opens doors for me in terms of employment and the kind of jobs that I want to do. So that was a big reason for me to go to grad school.
The whole BA, BS thing is kind of funny. My dad got a bachelor's of science in French in college. And it's just funny that you got a bachelor's of arts in real science.
I don't actually know what the difference is. I know that I got a bachelor's of science, but I don't know why.
It has to do with the like number of dedicated units to that major. So like a bachelor's of arts in physics, you know, you have maybe what, 28 dedicated units to physics, rather than like a Bachelor of Science, which is maybe 36. You know, like it's basically saying you've taken more class specific or major specific classes. But all of my other classes were either the core classes that I had to take at Oxy or math or computer science. So it's baloney.
Well, I decided to go to grad school because I used to think that I wanted to be a researcher full time. Now I'm not so sure, but that's okay because I have 3 more years to figure that out. But yeah, I wanted to do astronomy research. So grad school was kind of the logical next step to be able to do that.
So I work.
Initially,
Oh,
sorry,
go ahead, Amy.
I initially chose not to go to grad school, mostly because I knew that I just wasn't going to get my act together. Like, that's a really bad answer, but I think I knew that it was a really serious decision, and I knew that I wasn't in a great place to be making such a serious decision, so I thought it might be a good time to maybe take a year and work. And I think in hindsight, that was a good choice, because when I ultimately did apply 3 years later, I was basically positive about what I wanted to do. And I felt like I knew a lot more about the field that I was interested in. And I had definitively ruled out, I don't want to work in experimental work in this field. I want to work in this very narrow subset of the field. And I feel like that was invaluable information to have before applying to something, as specific and as focused as a PhD. I'm not sure I could have made as well-informed a decision in my senior year of college. So I initially made the decision not to, and later came back and decided for it.
I was somewhat similar, where I initially made a decision not to go directly to grad school. So instead, out of undergrad, I took a year and I worked in business analytics in LA. And I decided while I was working there that it wasn't really for me. Like, the work was somewhat interesting, but I wanted to do work that was more technically challenging. And the options at that point were that, well, I could apply to different jobs and find something more technical, or I can apply to grad school. And my thought there was, if I apply to grad school and go for a PhD in physics, I'm going to be hopefully kind of guaranteeing myself to get interesting technical work somewhere down the line. It was also just something that I was, interested in doing because I'm interested in physics and I'm interested in learning in an academic environment. So with all of that, I decided to, after the year of business analytics, go to grad school. And I think it's been a pretty good decision so far, but I also haven't had to apply for jobs out of grad school yet, so we'll find out.
For fun, John, let them know what you are a business analyst for.
Oh yeah, so I did like projections and like marketing and inventory analysis for a company that makes and distributes baby furniture. So that was fun.
I also took a year before I went to grad school too. So if anybody's thinking about gap years, you can talk to John, Amy, and I, and we can elaborate on our experiences.
I also took a gap year. I intended to go to grad school right after college because I was really sure that I didn't know what kind of job I wanted to get. And I like learning stuff, so that seemed like enough. I applied to a bunch of astronomy programs and I didn't get into any of them. So I was kind of forced to take a gap year. I can tell you, this is like one thing that I felt a lot of anxiety about leading up to my decision to go to grad schools. I was really afraid I wouldn't get in anywhere. And then it happened. And like it's not the end of the world. It feels really bad, I won't lie. But I spent a year at home. I kind of collected myself, studied more for the tests, and applied to grad school again for a slightly different interest. And it can work out even if you don't get in the first time, I think is important to say. Yeah. But the gap year gave me an opportunity to kind of refocus on what I actually wanted to pursue in terms of research. I realized that I wanted to look more at biology than astronomy. And it also gave me the opportunity to do some work. And I worked as a tutor for a big part of that year. And that helped me understand that I thought I maybe had some interest in teaching, but after doing some tutoring in my gap year, I realized that I definitely do have an interest in some amount of teaching. And so that was kind of helpful going into grad school, knowing that I wanted to try to get some teaching experience out of it too.
How did you guys choose which schools to apply to?
I think someone, Connor, just asked the question, if you don't get in anywhere the first try, how's it work with recommendations? Well, I guess I can answer that, because I just asked them again, like a year later. I just said, hey, I didn't, well, first of all, they knew I hadn't gotten in. So I had to tell all of them I didn't get into grad school, which was as painful as that might sound, but they understand. And then I just asked again the following year, the same people, if they would write me a letter, and they did. The professors get it, and they're pretty chill. But also I got a fourth person to write a letter. I don't know if that helped.
Okay, we're going to continue going through some of our questions, and then we'll get to like audience questions. Yeah, and Connor, thanks for that question. How did you guys choose which schools y'all were applying to?
I started with Grad School Shopper, which is sort of like College Board if you used that for undergrad. I don't know if that makes me sound old, but that's how I decided where to go to undergrad. And basically it's the same thing for grad school. I knew where in the country I did not want to live. And so I just only like filtered out like schools in states or regions that I knew I like would enjoy living, and then just kind of went from there. So I built a big list using that, and then looked at each school more individually as to like what their program was like, who was doing research there, did I like any of it, and basically just had a big Excel sheet that I just filled out more information as I went, and then just like removed schools once they just like didn't meet the cut, basically. And so I ended up applying to 9 schools.
I kind of looked at my application and made some estimates on where I thought I could land as far as like what schools would be target schools, what schools would be reach schools, what schools would be safety schools, etc. And so I ended up choosing schools between, I don't know, say like in kind of the middle or middle to high ranking. And then I looked at, of that set of schools, which schools had a strong like experimental condensed matter program, which is what I was interested in. And then from there, I took that narrowed list and I chose a couple of schools in each kind of region of the country. Unlike Anna, I was kind of interested in, well, having some options as far as where I would live, well, in the country for graduate school. And I applied to, I think, 3 schools on the West Coast, 3 schools in the Midwest, and then 4 schools on the East Coast. And I ended up with a couple of options on the East Coast and a couple of options on the West Coast, and I decided to come to USC.
I can go. Well, the first time I kind of just picked programs that had research I was interested in without any regard for maybe like requirements or I mean, what my chances of getting in were and where they were or anything. I kind of just picked based on my interests. I don't know that that's bad necessarily, but I think the second time around, I tried to apply to a wider range of schools. I applied to 6 programs the first time and 11 the second time, I think. And it was just kind of a matter of picking out programs that were at schools. I don't want to say like worse schools, but schools that had smaller programs and schools that maybe weren't as well known that still did research I was interested in, because there are a lot of graduate programs all around the country. But like applying to, I mean, it's the equivalent of for undergrad safety schools, I guess, is like a good idea. Like just applying to places that you're interested in that aren't like maybe your top pick. So I tried to pick a few of those. And then I also tried to pick some that were like kind of a reach or very exciting or very specifically what I wanted to do. But I went based on research interests mostly.
I can go next. I applied to one school and I got in there. The reason that I got into grad school is John and I, probably from earlier, we went to the same undergraduate year. Well, the same undergraduate school in the same year, and then each took different gap years. And when he got into USC, he thought that the work would be a good fit for the kind of physicist that I was when we were both in undergrad. And so I came over and spoke with Vitali in person, I think maybe 3 months or maybe 4 months before the application deadline. And he said, if you're interested, just go ahead and apply. So I started immediately studying for the PGRE and took the test, sent in my application, met with the faculty on the application panel, I think in January, and then started working in his lab as a lab tech, and then got accepted and started as a student the summer before the first year.
I applied based mostly on research area and was willing to take some, secondary or tertiary research interests for the sake of getting like a good portfolio of schools to apply to. I feel like most of them were reaches. Like, it wasn't a good spread. I wouldn't advise somebody to apply to as many reaches as I did. But I think I applied to 11 and got into 3. And when I was choosing between, my kitten just jumped up. When I was choosing between the schools, the 3 schools I got into, which don't hurt to walk on my keyboard, it ultimately came down to number of faculty in the interest area. And USC has like a million quantum information faculty, and Tufts really has 1, Dartmouth really has like 2. And so I was like, I didn't mean to be dark, but I actually knew somebody whose advisor had passed away in the middle of their PhD. And I just thought, what if that happens? Like, it's so dark, it's like perish the thought type of thing, but you have to think about that. It's unfortunate, but so USC being as well established in this particular area as it is ended up being the factor that clinched my decision. I'm sorry about the cat.
Dobie.
Do not be sorry about your cat.
Please don't apologize.
She just temporarily unmuted me. This.
The content we need.
Okay, thanks y'all, and thanks to Amy's cat. What kind of like activities and experiences would y'all suggest looking into for like the undergrad school year and also for summers? Y'all have talked about like research, for instance.
Research and outreach. Do outreach. It will make a difference in your application. And even if it like doesn't immediately make a difference in like, it won't necessarily make a difference for every single school, but it will definitely make a difference in any fellowship applications you do in the future. Do outreach in undergrad. It will make doing outreach in grad school easier.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Oh, yeah.
For the outreach, how can I make an outreach? Like how to start and how I can apply for them?
So you just have to kind of see what's available to you on your campus already, and then go from there would be my suggestion. So SPS, when I was in undergrad, would do outreach periodically throughout the year. I know that at USC here, there's the science outreach, so it's like Scout is the like name they go by. They do a lot of work with local schools and just stuff like that. I think is really important. I think it can make your like application, especially like a personal statement or something like that, stand out more because I don't know. I just think it makes it look better. Also because it's fulfilling and it's important to uplift the next generation of scientists.
Thank you.
Yeah, on the other side, so that's really good advice. I think is often overlooked. Outreach is going to be really helpful for applying to anything because it's going to show that you're well-rounded, and then it has the added benefit of making the world a better place and hopefully building a world with more scientists. But other things to get involved with, I think the really obvious one as well is to, if you have opportunities to do research at your undergraduate institution, to get involved with them as early as possible and to, well, really reach out to professors early and to not be shy. So if you're, a first year, second year, third year, wherever you are in your career, if you haven't done research yet, trying to get involved with that as early as you can before applying to grad school is really helpful and is really going to strengthen your application. But on the other hand, I did not do that. I had when I applied to grad school exactly one summer of research, and that was the summer between my junior and senior year. I didn't have research experience up to that point because I was a senior student and I didn't have research experience. That actually made me a really strong candidate for the NSF REU program, which I highly recommend applying to whether or not you have research experience at, well, pretty much any point in your career. It's relatively competitive, but there's a whole bunch of different schools that essentially will allow undergraduates from other schools to come in and do research for the summer. And it's a funded gig, and it's a really, really nice structured program to gain research experience and kind of get an idea if being a graduate student or being or living in a graduate student environment for a summer is something that would be, amenable to you. So if you can get involved with research, do so. And if you haven't gotten involved with research yet, well, try to do so. And if you don't get any research, you get very little research, you could still get into grad school. I did anyway.
I'll just agree with what John said. Basically, I started research my sophomore year of college, like in the spring. And so I had about 2 years. By the time I applied to grad school the first time, I really only had like a year and a half of research experience. I did an REU through the NSF between my junior and senior year of college, which I think was helpful. The guy who I worked for wrote one of my letters of recommendation. I think the REU or any kind of internship, honestly, that's vaguely science or engineering is going to be good, because if you can have some sort of boss who is not a teacher and not the person that you do research for at your home university, if it's someone like a third party that also says you are like a hard worker and smart and stuff like that, that just looks nice on applications.
I'll throw out the tidbit of advice that new professors are generally easier to join their research than more established professors. At least that's how it was at my very small undergraduate university. Advice that may not scale perfectly to a large R1 university. So maybe keep that in mind. But I mainly lucked out in finding research by approaching the new faculty member who ended up writing the only rec letter from my college. I used 2 industrial rec letters apart from his.
Okay, thanks, Yo. Oh, Brian, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just one more thing about the research, because I realized I didn't say anything about how I started doing it. I had the benefit of the head of the department at the Penn State Astronomy Department basically said to anyone that came through the classes he taught that if you were interested in doing research in the department, to send him an email, and then he would contact professors, which is pretty nice in how I started doing research. But I think like if there's a professor that you're interested in working with, emailing them or talking to someone in the department who might know if they're taking students, if you're too nervous to email them, is a good idea. So you can kind of feel it out before you try to get into it. And sending an email and them saying they don't have room in their group for an undergrad doesn't really mean anything. You haven't really lost anything by doing that. So it's a good idea to just kind of put the feelers out, I think.
Thanks, Brian. What was the application process like for y'all? Like, what advice do y'all have for underclassmen who are like preparing and seniors who are currently applying?
I highly recommend having an Excel spreadsheet that keeps track of like everything for you, of your application dates, exactly the things that you need for each different application, even a way to like access the specific like prompt of the statement of purpose for a different university, so that you make sure that you address each individual thing that they ask for, because some of them will ask very specific questions. Some of them will just say, provide a statement of purpose, and you need to be able to do both of those things. So having a spreadsheet that did that, and then also having a spreadsheet that kept all of my like letter writers in check, and like making sure that they had access to that so that they knew all of the dates of everything, and like being able to look at that so that I could send them reminders and stuff like that. And through the Excel spreadsheet that they had access to, I also gave them like links to my CV and my personal statements so that they could read those and make sure that they, like, for each school that I was applying to, mentioned something specific from that statement so that it like felt very cohesive and like that sort of thing. And they knew the things that I wanted them to touch on in those letters. Just staying organized will make a world of difference.
My advice is to start your personal statement relatively early if you have the opportunity to do so. I found the application process to be much more like a cookie cutter process than applying to undergraduate, where for every school you're essentially going to submit a CV, a personal statement that has your research interests in it, and then like transcripts and letters of rec and stuff. So really the only thing that you need to focus on directly is that well, mainly the personal statement, and then just, yeah, like Anna said, tailoring it to each university that you apply to. But really, if you have like one living document that you can adjust a paragraph or two in to send to each school individually, that's really the only new piece of information you're going to be giving to each school. So it's definitely daunting to apply, but it's not daunting in the sense that you need to write like 3 or 4 supplementary essays for each graduate school that you apply to. You're really submitting one document. So starting on it early, and then getting feedback on it is helpful. And then also having that personal statement done, or at least a working draft in progress to send to your letter of rec writers, I think is really helpful, because that's information that they can use to help write you a better recommendation, because they kind of emphasize things that you state in your personal statement. And then for the letters of rec, Brian touched on this earlier, but having letters of rec from different sources is really helpful. So I think a really traditional set out of undergrad is like one from your academic advisor, or from a faculty member that is in your major that you have a good relationship with, one from your research advisor, and if you have another person who can speak to your research ability, preferably someone from a different school, that's really helpful. But I think a lot of institutions care, or they're glad to see letters of rec from different sources when you submit your applications. Like when I applied for the GRFP, for example, one of the comments that was made on one of the very positive reviews is like, oh, this person has 3 letters of rec from 3 different sources. So that appears to be something that's weighted fairly highly if possible. Although for a lot of students, you're going to have all 3 of your letters of rec from your institution. That's a pretty normal thing as well. But if you get the opportunity to do research somewhere else, I highly recommend trying to do that.
John, can you briefly explain what the GRFP is?
Sure. Yeah. So it's essentially a grant through the NSF that will fund you partially, but in a pretty major sense, through your through your graduate program. I think it's 3 years of funding, and you can apply for it a couple of times. You can apply for it once as an undergraduate, and then once again as a graduate student in either your first or your second year, but not both. It's a very prestigious thing to get. I did not get it, for the record, but you apply for it, I guess, somewhat similarly to applying to grad school, where you submit a personal statement, but then you also submit a research statement that focuses on a project that you'd like to do with a particular faculty member, typically. Applying for that as an undergrad is it's fine. I think it's supposedly easier to get as an undergrad, but it's also something that's very, very challenging to write, and I can't directly speak to that as an undergraduate student. Although applying for it as a graduate student is a little easier, because at that point you likely have someone that you're already working for or planning to work for, and that makes writing the research statement a good deal easier.
Also, it stands for the GRFP stands for the Graduate Research Fellowship Program, if anyone wants to look into it more. How did you guys go about like choosing advisors? Like, what was your path?
For me, choosing an advisor was a matter of looking at the faculty websites for the programs I was applying to, and this sort of ties into the application process too. One of the things that I think is really, really important about the application process is contacting professors that you potentially want to work for at universities you're planning to apply to. So that kind of ties in both of the two questions. So when I was applying to USC, I was looking online and I saw that there was a lot of research being done by Dr. Hasselwanter that I thought was really interesting. So I sent him an email and asked if we could meet for a Skype call to discuss one of his papers. And he was like, sure. And so that happened. And so I just sat down and had a long Skype call with Dr. Hasselwanter about his research while I was still applying. And I think that had something to do with me getting accepted here. One of the only other places that I had a conversation with a few other professors. One of the schools I super just didn't get into because I don't think I even applied to the program because the professor was so harsh, because she was like, you got an astronomy degree, you can't do biology. But the other school that I got into other than USC, I also spoke to a professor there before applying. And I think that was also helpful. And one of my letter writers knew someone there, which is also kind of important. But picking an advisor is, I don't know, research interests, and try to talk to them and get a sense of their personality. Because even if they do stuff you think is cool, if you guys don't get along, you're gonna have a really miserable time in grad school. And it's not always easy, and you might pick wrong, and then you're kind of just gonna have to live with it. But yeah, I just the research and try to talk to them before you come to the school, I think, are the best tips I can give.
And Tom and Darian, thanks for joining. Could y'all introduce yourselves with your name, your pronouns, what year you are, and your specialty and undergrad institution, and I'll throw it in the chat.
Okay, can you guys hear me at all? Okay, my internet's really, really spotty, so I only got some.
You can try turning off your video.
This isn't boding well.
Yeah, sometimes if you turn off the video, the connection's better.
She is hella frozen.
Yeah.
Hi, Tom. How was your meeting?
With that, but I think I'm supposed to introduce myself.
You're,
Try turning off your video,
And,
Darian. That might make the
everyone is still
connection
frozen.
better.
Ah, wait, okay.
Try turning off your video. That might make it better, Darian. And just do audio.
I'm trying.
Tom, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then Darian, we'll come back to you.
I don't know if she heard that, but I guess I can try.
Okay, cool. I'll throw it in the chat.
Yeah, so I'm Tom, he, him, his. So the question, let me look at the questions. Oh my God, I already forgot them. Okay, year. I'm in my third year. My specialty is computational condensed matter and materials physics. My undergrad institution was Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And yeah, so at Cal Poly, I pretty much was doing kind of research with a professor there who did thermoelectric type stuff. And he was kind of more of an experimentalist setting up his lab who wanted to do some computational stuff while it was set up. And I was kind of more into the computational stuff, so I did that. And then I applied to USC, which has this kind of large computational collaboration for materials, condensed matter, and even some quantum computing stuff that I joined. And yeah, that's how I got here.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Darian.
Okay, yeah, my computer, I don't know what's up, but I'll go ahead and give my introduction again. So my name's Darian, she, her. I'm a third year PhD student, and currently my specialty is superconducting qubits, and this is like experimental research. My undergrad was at Georgia Tech in Atlanta, and my undergrad research there was quantum materials, also experiment. So slightly different, but still in the realm of quantum. And how I chose my advisor, I think similar to how a lot of people did. I researched universities and I went to research like web pages and looked at everyone's work, but specifically USC, I had an interview with Eli and he was recruiting me into his group. So I had a like strong urge to come here because his research is really exciting. And also I felt like I had a guaranteed spot in the lab because he was asking me to join the group so early. So, and also location and et cetera, et cetera. But anything else I'm supposed to say?
This is helpful. Thanks, Darian.
Yeah.
Amy, could you speak more to like your path and like choosing advisors?
Oh, I have not chosen an advisor. Actually, I think I have a good sense of which direction to go in, by virtue of what I did when I worked at a startup that focused on quantum computing. I worked at Rigetti Computing in the Bay Area for 2.5 years. They're a startup that provides quantum computer access and advice. I started as an experimental physicist and realized that I really just didn't like that, working on the fridges. So I think I, made a lateral move. And so I became sort of like a research partner manager. And so what I would do is I would hop on phone calls, help explain away confusing experimental results, and kind of serve as this liaison, somebody who wanted to work more in the theoretical field, but somebody who had about 1.5 years experience working with the fridges, benchmarking them, finding their, quirks and helping people figure them out. So through that process, I think, let's see, I'm going to say I spoke with definitely Professor Ladar on a number of occasions, Prof. Di Felice once. That might be it. I'm going to say maybe Professor Brun on like a phone call, but most of my interactions have been like in that capacity and have been pretty focused on like what was confusing about your run on Thursday. Like, why did the X expectation value fluctuate so much? So I think a lot of my decision making is pretty skewed, and I think I'm overfitting to experiences right now. So I don't have a great answer, but yeah, that was a long answer for I don't really have an answer. Sorry about that.
Well, they give, there's an ensemble of grad students so that we can average out any of the kinds of variation that fit into our own experiences. So
When the typical advice goes, like when choosing an advisor, that the most important people to talk to are current and former grad students of that lab, because you can meet with the advisor and be like, wow, this research is great, and meeting with the advisor was actually kind of nice. And then if you talk with the 4th-year grad student and they're like bloodshot eyes and hair pulling out, and it's like, how are things in the lab? And they look at you and they're like, please just let it be over. You may want to think about like what your priorities are going into that. So, because there's some advisors who, if you come in there, they are going to crack the whip and get publication out of you if they can. And others have a little bit more of a holistic approach. So that it really is going to come down to like what you want out of an advisor, and if the other grad students kind of line up with that.
Yeah, I would concur with Ben. Honestly, at least in my opinion, the majority of research out there is pretty much like all interesting, like in physics in general. And it's typically like if there's something that's like, even if it's kind of like, on the fringe of the subject matter you're interested in, but like that group looks like way happier and that like advisor looks like a way more cooler person to work with, I would take that like 9.9 times out of 10 over like, the amazing like great like research this one person is doing, but he's just like has like the lab, everyone's like dying, and like he just doesn't look like a very fun person to work with. So
Because this is like a 5 or 6 or 7 year commitment that you're making. 4 if you're like awesome or lucky, but like you want to think about your quality of life a few years from now, not necessarily. Yeah. Anyway, that might not be the most helpful advice, but just think about the long-term commitment that you're making to this person and this lab, etc.
I just want to emphasize that because if I had been a little better about talking to the students I technically have 2 advisors right now, and wait, who's going to see this recording? If I had spoken more to the students for one of the advisors I have now, I would have known that I didn't really want to work for him, and now I'm stuck with him for possibly my whole degree. So it's definitely talk to the students if you can.
Yeah, if you get a chance to talk to students, I would say if they say it's good to work for that advisor, then great, go for it. If they say it's okay to work for that advisor, then definitely use caution. That should throw some flags. And if they say don't work for the advisor, then run. If the grad students say they're not a good person to work for, then do not work for them. You're more than likely going to have a bad time.
And people will likely be very honest with you. It's not so competitive that they'll lie to you for. Yeah, I can't think of a reason why someone would lie to you about their quality of work. So.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, none of the graduate students ever get commissions for recruiting undergraduates. So the incentive is definitely to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing to think about is just know what you're looking for in an advisor, and just like be aware of like what kind of structure you're interested in having for your research goals, and looking for someone who can fulfill those needs, because someone can be super nice and be doing really cool work, but if the way that they like exist and like organize themselves does not like work for you, then it's going to be difficult, even if they are like the coolest person ever.
And yeah, and these are questions that you're like expected to ask. Like, don't be afraid about asking like, how many times a week would we have group meetings, or what do you feel about personal one-on-one meetings, and how much hands-on mentoring are you going to be doing in the lab, etc. Because some advisors might have a really, really large group and aren't as present as others. And maybe that does work better for you, or maybe you need some more guidance. You would prefer to work with someone who's going to be available to give that to you. So it really sort of depends. Yeah, I think big takeaway is like, don't be afraid to ask questions of like grad students, of the advisor themselves, everyone, because yeah, this is a long commitment and no one expects you to just go into it blind.
Okay, thanks, Al. Thanks for talking about work-life balance. Twee asks, so like since earlier we were talking about the difference between a BA and a BS, Twee asks, do I need to go to grad school if I got a BS in a subject? Will not going help or decrease my chances of getting a good paying job?
I think it totally depends on what you want to do. Grad school is a marathon. If it's not what you want, then don't put yourself through it.
As far as jobs, like it depends on where you want to work specifically. Like most industry jobs, you can go to their website and see their available positions and see the required qualifications, etc. And if the job you want requires a PhD, you're not likely to get it necessarily without a PhD. But also there are so many job opportunities that a BS or even a BA in physics is enough qualification for. So I'd suggest doing a little bit of research first. And also what Anna said, if you aren't like 100% about grad school, you don't have to put yourself through it. There's other options. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, if you're in it for the money, a PhD in physics is probably not the optimal route for you. There's going to be a lot better options if you just want a lucrative, high-paying career. But if what you like Anna said, you should look at what kind of jobs you want and what kind of requirements they're going to have, and see if a PhD is warranted for what you're going to do. And then the other side of this is if you want to go get a PhD and you want to do PhD style work, you want to do research, and you're really interested in physics, then going to grad school is a pretty great experience. It's just if you're looking at, I guess, only the end goal, maybe it's harder to determine if grad school is right for you or not, or if the end goal is just to make a lot of money, grad school might not be the best case. Although I think most people who end up getting PhDs in physics end up rather comfortable.
Yeah. If you're trying to like increase your odds of getting a job out of graduating out of any program, be it for us as we're getting closer to graduating, or for you guys as you're graduating undergrad, if you want to increase your odds the most, begin networking. Go to all of these USC Connect events, start asking professors that you have a good relationship with if they know anybody in an industry that you are interested in. Ask your friends if they know anybody that's in an industry that you're interested in. The vast majority of jobs that you see on job postings, you could blanketly apply to 100 and maybe you'll get 1 or 2 callbacks. But if you have a friend of a friend who knows the VP of a company and they're like, oh yeah, I'll send them your resume, and then you get a callback, you're increasing your odds of getting into a job much more by trying to get connected with the people who are offering those jobs or looking for quality people than you would be just by like saying, I have this particular degree, please hire me. Another way to get into jobs too is applying for internships places, and then those internships very, very often translate into jobs after you graduate.
Yeah, I was gonna comment that transitory like jobs are a very good way to get into like a high paying industry. So having a low paying internship first, but having your name in the door. They prefer to like take someone on that's already been trained and is already like accustomed to the project. So any kind of transitory work is a good call.
Just to add one thing, if you think you want to apply to grad school and you're doing that anyway, it's usually completely free to apply to any job anywhere. So if you just want to apply to a ton of jobs, you can do that. And other than the time you spend on the applications, it's really not going to hurt you. So you can do both.
I have to second the advice for jumping between positions. I've seen a lot of people stay at a company for 6 months, not even hit their vesting cliff. They just move around for the increased salary, and they can find a 50% salary increase in like 18 months. I mean, it can be done. Don't manufacture loyalty to the company that you begin to work for. I think that that's very dangerous. This is a transactional relationship, and you can be proud of the work that you do there, and you can be grateful for the time that you spend there and what you learn, but don't be afraid to move on and get your money if that's what's important to you. And I wouldn't be afraid that you can't make money with just a bachelor's degree. I definitely didn't choose to come to grad school to make more money. Definitely not in the short term. That it wasn't my concern, but you can be quite comfortable, especially if you have any software experience whatsoever. I sleep well at night knowing that if the shit really hits the fan, I can go work in software engineering and pull a comfortable salary and probably hate my life, but put a roof over my head and support people around me that require, assistance. Figure out what's important to you. If money's on that list, that's okay, but don't be beholden to it. And definitely don't be beholden to the people that are giving you the money. That's my advice.
Thanks, Yo. Connor has a question, and he's asking, how important is like the name of the grad school? I've heard varying opinions on it, and it's definitely currently a stressor.
In my opinion, good research happens at a lot of places that you don't know the name of. Like while I was in undergrad, I had a friend, I was in undergrad at the University of South Carolina, not a particularly prestigious school for physics, but there was a group there that worked extremely closely with a group at Harvard, and they did almost all of their research together. So going to South Carolina and getting that experience was exactly the same as the students who were in that research group at Harvard, and they both got to grad school with having all of the same connections. So that's like, I guess, an undergrad like point of view, but good research happens at lots and lots of places. So choosing a school for its name when it's not necessarily the right choice for you, I think it's a bad call.
Yeah, I would agree with Anna and say that basically like pretty much it's more who you're going to work with rather than the school, right? If it's some small school, but there's some like really cool person there who's doing like amazing research, right? And like it's just like the perfect fit. That's like way better than going to like Princeton or Harvard or whatever. It definitely is more just like you're going to be doing research with this person for 4 to 5 years, and it's more what that person is doing and how they're in the respect in the field is sort of like the more important thing in terms of than like a school ranking.
Yeah, there is a slight flip side to this, in that if you're trying to be very, very competitive in academia, then there are like certain groups that are like leaders in their respective fields, and getting your foot in the door with one of those groups can help you. Like if you're a progeny of X professor at X university, then that's already a really, really well-known name, and that could help you get a postdoc in another lab after the fact. But that's not the most important factor. Quality of life is going to be really important. Sometimes those big name groups are like, I mean, they're big name groups for a reason, in a sense. They work very hard and they have a lot of publications. So that might be like an indicator of what your quality of life would be in that group. But you can do just as quality of research elsewhere. Yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, but it depends on what your goals are too. If you want to be the most competitive researcher in your field and go on to get an academic position, then sometimes group names can help you slightly.
You can be good at networking from like any school though. Like that's a skill that you should develop no matter where you are. Your school that you choose and the group that you choose may be like better or worse at it, but like you can establish relationships with people in the field that you want to be in no matter where you are. And that like kind of recognition will get you just as far as having a like big name school on your resume.
All right. Thanks so much to all the grad students for like being here and answering our questions. And thank you to everyone who came and asked questions. We really appreciate it. Okay.
Grad students can put their email in the chat so people can send them emails if they have follow-up questions for anything specific, if that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
I like this less when you can't make eye contact.
I was staring into your soul the entire time, Brian.
Oh, that's nice.
Not even through the computer. He's staring directly at the wall.
Well,
He knows where he knows you guys would be making eye contact if you could see through.